Welcome back to the Scotti-BYTE channel, and this is Scott. So, what are VPNs anyway? Well, we hear the term VPN or virtual private network very frequently these days. The most common VPNs are public VPN providers like NordVPN, ExpressVPN, Surfshark, ProtonVPN, and really the list goes on and on. So the other VPN that is familiar is a VPN from your home to your business, especially in this time of work from home. VPNs promise to protect your privacy and also to hide your data from prying eyes. So do they actually do this? Well, to understand that, first we have to understand what VPNs actually do. A virtual private network is also called a tunnel, and it's actually an encapsulated and encrypted pathway from a workstation to a network or from one network to another network. So VPN tunnels are completely secure until they reach their endpoint. So if you're using a public VPN provider, the endpoint is a server that's located in another city, state, or country. So if you're using a VPN to a company, the path from your computer to the company is secure and you appear as though you're working inside of the company. So in general, VPNs make you appear virtually as though you're located on another network. So what are use cases for VPNs? Well, you can self-host a VPN server at home, and you want to see my tutorial, Self-Hosted EASY Wireguard Server, to learn how to do that. And my last tutorial, Why You Want Cloudflare Zero Trust, shows how you can extend your network to another location virtually to provide for secure self-hosting. So a self-hosted VPN at home can protect your mobile devices in Wi-Fi hotspots just like a public VPN. So you probably use an employer VPN from your home to facilitate work at home. And a VPN can be used as a protected enclave to provide access to selected systems on your network. For example, Cloudflare Zero Trust and Zero Tier might be some examples. And a VPN can be used to connect two networks together at different locations, and that's generally referred to as a site-to-site VPN. This diagram outlines what my Easy Hosted WireGuard Server tutorial describes, and that is basically having a workstation or a mobile device in a remote location and then being able to connect from it to your home lab or home network. And examples of protocols that are used on a VPN client to do that might be OpenVPN, L2TP, or WireGuard. So basically what happens is that if you're in a remote location, you launch what is called a VPN client. And that VPN client creates an encrypted tunnel which basically virtually projects you onto the target network you want to be located on. And on that target network, you generally have a VPN server that accepts your connection and then allows you onto this network, and then also potentially allows you to travel from this network to other networks, although that's not pictured in this diagram. And what typically happens is that you receive another NAT type of address when you turn on your tunnel, so you don't have the local address of wherever you are. And this is considered to be a very secure way of doing business, particularly if you're in a public Wi-Fi hotspot. And the reason for this is because your traffic is not exposed to that local untrusted network. Instead, you have this encrypted tunnel all the way to your home network. And one thing that makes VPNs secure or insecure is where their endpoints are. Since the endpoint for this VPN is inside of your network, there is no de-encrypted traffic outside of your network on the public internet. The most common use case of VPNs would be what I refer to as an outbound VPN. And that's if you have a workstation on your home lab home network and you're connecting out to a public VPN provider like NordVPN, in which case you're contacting a server somewhere on the internet and that becomes your endpoint. And when you pop out of that endpoint, then you're no longer inside your encrypted tunnel and your traffic is in the open and can be tracked. And so, therefore, what ends up happening is you connect to server X or website Y, and that's de-encrypted. But your encrypted traffic travels from your workstation all the way to the VPN, the public VPN provider's endpoint. So normally that's what we refer to as a split tunnel. The reason that it's normally a split tunnel is because you can access things over the VPN tunnel on the internet, but when you access things on your local area network, for example, this printer here or either one of these servers, you can also do that. The other use case that we have of outbound VPNs is when you have a client and it's going to connect to your company in the work at home scenario. So you have an encrypted tunnel from your client out to ABC Company, and ABC Company hosts the VPN endpoint. So therefore, your traffic is totally safe in regards to being exposed to the public internet because your endpoint is inside the company. So in essence, you're virtually projected inside of that company. And normally, company policies are such that they require a what's called tunnel all scenario, where all of your traffic is encrypted and all of your traffic moves to the company VPN. In which case, when you're connected to the tunnel, you cannot contact your local printer or either one of your local servers that you might have at home. And normally this is done for security reasons. In the last video, I discussed Cloudflare Zero Trust Tunnels. And these tunnels are designed whereby on your local area network, you have a Cloudflare Zero Trust connector, which is basically a client program that connects to the Cloudflare endpoint. And in our example in the last video, we connected to an endpoint for the domain Scotti-BYTE.net. So instead of having the wide area network, the WAN address of my router being serving out my services, in essence, my services are served out by Cloudflare, even though they're local to my network. So in order to accomplish this, we have a tunnel from the connector out to the Cloudflare endpoint. And then end users are not contacting my network, but they're contacting the Cloudflare endpoint, and the Cloudflare endpoint does reverse communication over the connector to the systems on my network. So in order to do this, Cloudflare uses a product called Argo Tunnel, and they describe it as a virtual post office box. So one of the features is if you go down to your post office and you buy a post office box number and people mail things to you, they don't know where your physical address is because they're using the post office box. And Cloudflare Zero Trust Tunnels work exactly that way because the end user only knows they're reaching Cloudflare, but they have no idea where your network is actually located. So this is what I call a DMZ, or demilitarized zone virtual private network. And these types of VPNs are a little less common, but basically, just like a military DMZ, they serve as a buffer zone. So in this particular case, you can see that I have a local area network. And this local area network might be addressed at 192.168.1.0, and it may have a user here and a couple of servers. But then we have some firewall rules that allow connection over VPN, just like an inbound VPN, except that this inbound VPN might connect to a VLAN on my network. It might use a program like Chasm. It might be using Zero Tier or Tailscale. And basically what it does is it has an enclave, and generally that enclave can only be reached by things using that client. And that even includes the people on this local area network. They may not be able to reach this network without establishing a VPN connection to this network, even though technically it's part of my same network. The last type of VPN that's worthwhile looking at is what's called a site-to-site VPN, where we have the internet up here, but we have a network, perhaps two home labs, one home lab here, say in one location, in one city or one state, and here another network in another city and another state. And basically what happens is that there is a site-to-site endpoint on the first network and a site-to-site endpoint on the second network. And what happens is that this network makes an encrypted connection through the internet to this network. So there's one encrypted tunnel that goes from here to here, but the communication is never exposed on the public internet. And in fact, this is what companies use all the time to make connections between multiple sites. In the old days, they used to use what were called leased lines, and they paid the telephone company a lot of money to have a dedicated circuit from one location to another. But nowadays, basically, we use site-to-site VPNs to establish the same thing. And the only real prerequisite of a site-to-site VPN is, if you'll notice very carefully here, this network is addressed at 192.168.1.0, whereas this network is addressed at 192.168.2.0. And for routing reasons, you really need to have a different address range for each of these networks so that it will understand how to communicate from a device over here to a device over here. And that's where site-to-site VPNs really come in handy for business. So in summary, a public VPN service is good for geolocation. But in terms of actually protecting your data, it is true that if you use a public VPN at a coffee shop, you will not be exposing your communication in the coffee shop, but your communication is unencrypted the minute it leaves the VPN tunnel at the VPN endpoint server. So for that reason, I would highly recommend that you self-host your own VPN at home and use it as an inbound VPN connection from that public location, and you'll get exactly the same type of security. So a VPN server inside your home can provide excellent security for your devices outside your home, and that's kind of what I just said. And you can access your network resources, but in addition to that, you can also further go out onto the internet from that remote location, just using your home internet service as a pass-through. So outbound VPN connections to your place of business protect the traffic from your device to your company, because in essence, you're being virtually projected inside of your company. And site-to-site VPNs provide a safe, encrypted tunnel between two locations for solid security. Anyway, that's it for today. Please subscribe and like to the channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, and we'll see you next time.